Welcome to part 2 of the Flippening prediction, the biggest prediction that I've ever made. And it's not just my prediction on the fundamental side. This can be attributed to the big one and Pat Ziggy over at the Cryptide Discord, which I recommend you check out, the link in the description below. So let's jump into the Fibonacci retracements. I've already explained the original retracement here. If you'd like to check that out, have a look in the previous Fibonacci video, but I've had to extend it. The top retracement here would only go to 0.4, and that's not high enough. We need at least 1.0, because we believe as a result of this situation, the perfect storm, that price will exceed 1 Bitcoin. So to figure out how that's going to happen, we need to extend the fib. In order to do that, I place the 1 at every second interval of the previous Fibonacci. So you can see here I've got the arrows of the respective colors indicating where I place the number 1 of that fib. So the number 1 of the blue fib was placed here. So I skipped 1 and then 2 over here. And then on the yellow, I skipped 1 and then 2, put the 1 here, and then again on the purple. And you'll notice that because I started the 0 at the same points and I referred each of the Fibonacci's to the previous one, they all line up with one another. So for example, here you have white, blue, yellow, here all 4 lined up, all 4 here, all 4. So there are instances where the Fibonacci's don't line up with each other. For example, the 0.5 fib is on its own. That's okay because the 50% fib is kind of a non-fib. The 786 is also on its own, and that can still be considered a fib level, but just not as strong as the other levels. For example, this one with all 4 is considered very strong. So those Fibonacci retracements are the basis of how I place my targets and exit points throughout this chart. Now let's have a look at the shape of the chart itself. As you can see, it's operating within a triangle. I've drawn this triangle within the SMAs. It's not so important where the price exceeded to above and that it's broken out. The main thing is that a triangle structure is being formed, at least in a general sense. And I'm not sure if I've already mentioned, but the SMAs are more important than the price to indicate the general intention or energy or movement, direction of the chart. So you can see that we are operating within this nice clear triangle here. The support is clearly supported by the 7 SMAs, and I've drawn the line from the very top of this 7 SMA to as best I can along the top here. And here the 235 sticks very nicely to the SMA, and at the end I have what I call the breakout triangle here. It's kind of a subsect where it's on top of this number 1 fib. And the number 1 fib, you can see it is at the center of this triangle, at least more or less. I think of it as the center because you can see that it's the median point around which the rest of the chart oscillates. And that oscillation is getting tighter and tighter. Very large to very low, very high to very low, very high, high, and then now we're getting tighter around that central oscillation point. And that's reflected in the SMAs here. Resistance, support, drop down, and now we are in this window. And this line here represents the next BTC difficulty retarget. And as I've described before, this opens the window for the longest period where a potential network attack or a mining switch attack type of thing can happen, and where this feedback relationship between price and mining power is potentially open to happening. And so after this BTC difficulty retarget occurs, this is where I expect the breakout to happen from, at least some point around this retarget. I think it would be wisest for the manipulators involved, and yeah, I do believe that there are manipulators involved, to wait until the difficulty retarget occurs, but it could be less suspicious to do it just before or just after. It doesn't really matter, because once the retarget happens, the window is open, and there is this really long opportunity for the network to be crippled. So this is the launch point. This is where I believe the price will break out from. Okay, so once the price breaks, where's it going to? Well, when there's a triangle forming like this, it's usually a rule of thumb that the price will go as high on the breakout as the height of the triangle itself. So I like to take it from the Fibonacci's. So from the bottom fib to this fib here is around there. It's a bit of a conservative estimate, but let's drag it over to put the lowest point onto the number one fib, that central fib that I've highlighted, and this is where it goes to. And that leaves us right here, which is exactly in between this fib and this fib, which is why I've placed the exit point and entrance point here and here. And that is my 1 and 2 of the 5-wave impulse set. So this is where the 7 SMA will turn around, have a bit of a breather, and then head back up. But price will go beyond there, I believe, and potentially touch this fib here. But I've included this 786 fib of the yellow set in here as well. Now this purple one is the 0.5, so it does not matter. Okay, and here we have the zoom out of the overall prediction, and you can see down here the rest of the chart is dwarfed. This is monstrous. I believe that the peak will be 2.5, and I'll explain how I get there in a second, but just the size of this wave, it's around 1400 or 1500%. So that's around 15, 16 times if you just buy in now and hold. That is an extreme prediction, okay, and I understand how incredulous you might be, and I myself was disbelieving, and it took me a long time for my technical analysis to overcome my emotional brain that was just not believing, it was just not having a bar of it. But I'm now at a point where I'm confident in this, that I not only believe it's going to happen, I think that it's the most probable outcome, even though it's so crazy. So the main thing I'd like to point out about this 5-wave set is the 3 and the 4. I had to decide in making this prediction whether you would have resistance initially, and that would be the place of the 3, and then the 4 would be below, then the 5 above, or whether that would break through and then support on the number 1. And before going further, I'd just like to point out, look at how these Fibonacci's have lined up with the number 1. So this is just extending that initial Fibonacci retracement I showed you in that first video, and they land exactly on the number 1. I think that's awesome. So I decided that the number 4 would be where would hit on number 1, rather than the number 3 hitting below number 1. I decided this because, as I mentioned, I believe that this is a manipulated market. This is heavily manipulated. People have a lot of stake in this coin. So by orchestrating this market to break through 1 BTC and then find support on 1, this will be a groundbreaking event. This will be something that hasn't happened before. Not only has price exceeded that of Bitcoin and therefore the market cap of Bitcoin, but we have bounced on that market cap and then continued higher to more than double BTC. This is a statement, and this height would not be able to be reached without the 4 being above the number 1. But with a bounce on 1, the market sentiment will shift. They will be thinking this is the new Bitcoin, and plus the network on Bitcoin will be crippled by Bitcoin Cash. And so this is why the price will go so high. Now, if this 3-4 interaction doesn't happen, I'll be much more skeptical on this 5-wave prediction to go to 2.5. But this is the best prediction that I can come up with. This is the most logical answer that I have for what's going to happen. So it's not just a hope, it's not just emotion, it's logic. It's logic pointing me in this direction. From then on, the ABC corrective waves, there should be 2 of them. I expect the C to drop below 1. And to drop way deeper to less than 0.5 of a Bitcoin, because Bitcoin will bounce back, and it will bounce back hard. It will continue to be the bellwether of the overall market, because it always has been, and it will always have the first mover advantage, and it has the name and the brand Bitcoin. It is the original, and it will be valuable as long as people consider it to be valuable, whether or not it's a good transaction medium. So here are my ABC points. I won't go into too much detail into how I figured these out. These are more of a guesstimate. This 5-wave impulse wave, I'm pretty confident in. I'm rather sure. In terms of certainty, I'm very sure that the price of Bitcoin Cash will exceed that of Bitcoin due to the dynamics described. I'm quite sure that they will follow this 5-wave pattern I have here, and I am not as sure that they will follow this ABC corrective wave here. However, I'm very sure that price will drop back below 1 BTC in the future. So that is my Bitcoin Cash prediction. I'll have a quick look at Bitcoin here, because this is going to have the inverse effect. As the network is crippled, as Bitcoin Cash is running, Bitcoin is going to dump in corresponding strength. And previously I expected the C to bounce on here. That was my prediction, and we did have a bounce from 6,000, not from 7,000 where I predicted, which indicated to me that we hadn't yet reached the bottom. And also this weak bounce here suggested that we're going much lower. Another negative sign is that we've been in a bearish channel of RSIs from here. You can see the bottoms touching here, the tops touching here, with one break on the initial B wave here. And now we've had this temporary break up here, which I am calling a bull trap. And then within 3 days, I think we'll be down around here within the 8,000s at the time of the BTC difficulty retarget. And then from there, we have around 50% down to go, which is around 60% from current price. And this 2.5 prediction for Bitcoin Cash, I think will correspond approximately with this C wave for Bitcoin of around 4,000. So after this happens, as I mentioned, I think Bitcoin will bounce back very strongly because it still has all of the trading pairs. It still is the Bitcoin, and even if it's slow, people will still use it because it will always be there. And the fear that's built into this drop will wear off as soon as people realize Bitcoin isn't going away. Even if it's crippled for a while, it will always be there. And so from the C point, it will be a good opportunity to enter into altcoins. And there we have it. That's my prediction of Bitcoin Cash heading to the moon. And if that's not the moon, then I don't know what is. If you'd like to follow this idea, I'll be putting it onto TradingView as a private idea. And to gain access to that, you can have a look in the Cryptide Discord, and I'll put a link to it in the Z section underneath Z. So join Cryptide to check that out, and I hope to see you over there in the Discord. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Happy trading.